Hey everybody, it's me again. I am back and fresh off of my reading slump. I have completed the book, How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. I currently have a Book of the Month subscription, and it's a thing that I haven't taken advantage of very much for a while. Like sometimes the books that are in the Book of the Month club are really, really appealing to me, and other times they aren't. It's kind of the nice thing about the thing is you can either like pick a book every month or you can choose not to, and you can save your credits and, pick up a book when you are interested. Well, this month, I was very interested when I saw that there was a book called How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. You see, I am a big Keanu Reeves fan. I mean, I guess it's not that weird to be a Keanu Reeves fan now. Like, he's had this resurgence. But when I was making my Letterboxd list of, like, my favorite movies, I realized so many of them are Keanu movies. Like, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, John Wick, The Matrix is my favorite movie of all time. Like, I like Keanu Reeves as a person. He seems really cool, and also like I like a lot of his movies. I'm not a huge movie buff, but it just so happens that a lot of the movies that I love are Keanu Reeves movies. So when I saw this title pop up, and it just so happened like I was also in a reading slump and I was looking for something different to read where I mostly read epic fantasy, I picked this book up and I was not disappointed. There's a lot of things that I can say about How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days, and I'll try to get some of those out in this video. First off, I should state that I'm really not that much of a romance reader, but I was looking for something that was a change of pace because after finishing some big epic fantasies, I needed something different to help me get back into reading. I said in a previous video, it'd been like weeks, maybe a month since I actually finished a book, and I'm happy to say that this is the first book that I finished hot off of my reading slump. And let's talk about How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. So the plot essentially is, there is this up-and-coming artist who's very talented, and she has a lot of prospects on the horizon, and she is, I think early 40s. She finds out via Twitter that Keanu Reeves is going to be getting married in 90 days, and that sends her into a spiral. At least on the surface, it seems like that's what sends her into a spiral. And the plot of the book is this whirlwind of a story where the main character, Lou, decides that she is going to take it upon herself to stop Keanu Reeves from getting married. There's also a rumor that he might be quitting the film industry and retiring from making movies, and she's not okay with that. Like, she's a huge Keanu Reeves fan. She has a massive crush on him and has for basically her whole life, and she is not okay with the idea of Keanu Reeves being tied up, and especially not okay with him being done with making movies. So the plot of this book is very silly, obviously from the forefront, but that's not a surprise. Like, it's very forward-facing with how ridiculous it's going to be. And we see very early on that the main character in this book is a little dramatic and a little bit ridiculous. But that's not a surprise. From the very first moments of the book, we see that she is a very talented artist. She has a lot of things going for her. She has a good friend group. She's kind of introverted. She doesn't like to leave her comfort zone. She represents both a lot of real things about people and a lot of stated things about people for both comedic effect and I think for dramatic effect. But I think there's a lot of things we can talk about when it comes to the story. But like on its surface, it's a friends to lovers, very silly romance. But what I want to talk about is how it brings up more than that. Like there's more things to discuss than just the silly A plot of this book. For one, you could criticize the book and say that it is just too over the top with this person who is, in her early 40s. She seems to be doing fairly well for herself in a lot of ways, but she has this weird emotional stunted growth thing when it comes to this obsession with essentially a fictional character. Like, she doesn't know Keanu Reeves, but she desperately wants to be in love with him. And I think that it's almost like that you look at this book when we're reading it and we could imagine that Keanu Reeves is just a metaphor for the things in our life that we strongly desire like our ultimate goals and dreams. And as I become older myself, and I think this is probably fairly common for most people, we recognize that like as we grow into adulthood, there's a lot of ways that we mature, and there's a lot of things we have to learn, and there's a lot of we get established into careers, we get established into patterns in our lives, but there are always these things that we still hold on to, whether they be like dreams, whether they be fantasies of some sort. I find that as we age, there are oftentimes elements of ourselves or our personality that can be held back by the past or by some realistic or unattainable goals that we would always imagine seeing. And as we age, I think we start to see doors close. When I was a kid, I wanted to be like a rock star. I wanted to be like a comedian. There's so many things that I wanted to do with my life. And as things developed, I got married, I had a family, I got established into a career because I have to provide financially for my family. Like there are these routines that you get involved in, but that doesn't stop you from desiring things that you've always wanted. Like you always have these things that it's like, I really wish I could have done this with my life. And the older you get, the more you see these doors closing. And I feel like more so than just this book being about a character that's sometimes a little bit ridiculous and her obsession with this Hollywood star, it's like a representation of the childhood fantasy that we all cling to. And as we grow older, we find ourselves losing any potential hope for obtaining that thing, that one element. That's like the deeper plot running under this very, very comedic book. Like it's very funny, intentionally in a lot of ways, and it's a friends to lovers thing. So it turns out that her best friend that has been close to her for a very long time is like this very supportive guy that is obviously in love with her, and she feels like, you know, they're friends, they can't be together. And of course he's obsessed with her. He wants her to be happy even if it's not with him. So he takes it upon himself to help encourage her and help her, you know, go through with this whole thing where they're going to be chasing Keanu Reeves across the country. You know, he lives a very mysterious lifestyle. You can't always pin down where he is. They're going to be chasing him down, and they do that through various different places over the country. And there's a ton of tropes that are in this book, some of which I tend to be okay with and some of which I don't like. Let's be honest. The majority of this book ends up being a complete manifestation of the miscommunication trope, which is something I normally don't like. But the way that it's portrayed in this book, while sometimes is obnoxious in the way that miscommunication tropes always are, which is if the characters would just have an honest, straightforward conversation with each other, they would be able to solve so many of the problems that they're having and the things they need to overcome a lot quicker. But the way that it happens in the story is like an exaggerated version of something that I do think is realistic, which is real life is not this simple, easy to understand thing where all the jigsaw pieces fit together. And on top of that, I think every single person is an unreliable narrator in their own story. We see things the way that, a combination of like the way that we want to see things, but if we have a pessimistic attitude, we're going to see things skewed through that pessimism in a way that makes us fundamentally misunderstand our own lives, our own goals, our own desires. I think this book does a really good job of portraying that with both the main character and also the love interest, this best friend character. If we're looking at the story objectively from the outside, it seems very apparent that this guy is in love with this girl, and also this girl has a deep affection for this guy that could lead to a great sense of intimacy. And I don't mean that just in the physical sense. I mean, these characters understand each other, they support each other, they know each other very well. And of course, we as the reader can see that because we can look at the situation objectively. These characters are invested in each other's lives in ways, while exaggerated, mimic real life, and real life is messy. We don't understand every single thing about ourselves factually. We understand them emotionally, and we get to experience a lot of that firsthand. Like I said, there's some frustrating parts where the characters just seem so dumb for not seeing what's right in front of them. But in real life, how many times do we make these types of mistakes? We don't say the things that we mean to. We don't say the things that we need to at the right times. And this book is full of exploring those types of situations in a humorous backdrop. It also has a lot of heart. It's not all fun and games. There's some deeper moments to be had. But this messiness of the way that the characters interact and the way that they just aren't seeing the world clearly is an exploration of the way that we all interact with each other all the time. And we have disagreements, but that doesn't mean that we can't see through them. That doesn't mean we can't work through them. And honestly, we all need to take some time, and maybe it would be beneficial if we are completely honest with each other. And that can be scary. Like, one of the things that the book, I think, explores without necessarily making it like the main thing is the idea of being intimate with other characters and sharing our deepest, like most honest feelings is terrifying. Having been married for quite a few years now, there are so many advantages that come to having a life partner that you can share everything with, and you can better understand each other, you can be honest with, and they can share things with you that are like maybe a more realistic version of the world to you because you're going to be seeing it a skewed way. You can help them in that way. But the idea of being that vulnerable with another human being, it can be so scary. And that's one of the things that these characters are facing. As Lou, the primary female protagonist of this story, like, she is struggling with these feelings and thoughts that she has with her best friend while she's having this essentially midlife crisis as she's seeing these opportunities of her fantasies being closed. Meanwhile, from the other perspective, True, the best friend / friends to lover love interest, is in love with this character, but he cares so much about her that he wants to support her and aid her in any way, even if it is at the cost of his own happiness. And it's not something that he doesn't struggle with. He struggles with it multiple times throughout the book. But they persevere and they carry on in spite of all of these struggles. I mentioned at the top of this video that I'm a Keanu Reeves fan, and I'm happy to say that with the comedic backdrop of all of this situation just being so absurd, there's so many references to The Matrix, to John Wick, to Bill and Ted, to Speed. Like, this is a thing that pays homage to Keanu Reeves and a lot of the work that he's done. It's very fun in that aspect. There are so many references to his movies that I feel like if you're not a Keanu Reeves fan, you'll realize some of the things that are being referenced, but some of these land very well. And since we are following characters that are chasing celebrities, we have the surprise entrance of multiple other celebrities get cameos in the storyline, and all of those cameos are handled in hilarious and just like, fan servicey ways. They're great. I don't want to spoil them for you if you plan on reading this book, but the other instances where we get to come across other celebrities, all of them are excellent. The Keanu Reeves movie filmography, excellent. And while this story is very predictable in so many levels, I do love the way that it explores these deeper things in ways that are lighthearted and allow us to look at those themes without necessarily being bogged down by them in something that's like super preachy. And ultimately, the story is a heartfelt romance that is generally lighthearted. Like, it's not the most impactful thing that I will read or have read, but it's a very short and super fun experience, had me laughing. Talking about this book with my wife has been very fun because it's a combination of like, there's some interesting stuff here, and also it's just a very lighthearted romp at the same time. So I'm very glad that I read this book, and I'm glad that it delivered on exactly what I wanted it to. And I'm also a little bit impressed about the way that we got to see some of these undertones of more relevant themes to aging and relationships and like lack of communication and the difficulty with being honest with oneself and with those closest to us in our lives. So yeah, this was a super fun read, and I'm glad that I picked it up because it really did help give me a change of pace with the stuff that I'm used to reading, and it introduced me to an author that I had a lot of fun reading her book. It had enough of the nerdy references that I didn't feel like I was straying too far out of my comfort zone. It allowed me to experience this fun, if silly and predictable, but more than you might initially think romance book. If you read this book, please let me know if you picked up on some of those deeper things. But if you haven't read this book and you want to discuss some of these topics in the comments down below, feel free to do so, because I really do think that those are relevant things for us to discuss. Like, as we get older and we see that our lives are changing, how do we change our dreams to match the reality of what's possible? What do we let go? How do we be open and honest with people when we've had pain in the past? You know, these type of topics, I think there would be great discussion points. This would be a very good book to be able to discuss in a book club, I think. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more book reviews from me in the future, please remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you hit the bell, you'll get notified every time I post a new video. If you are interested in reading this book, let me know. Or if you've read it, also let me know. I'd love to talk about it with you in more detail. If you'd like to talk to me about this book or books in general in more detail, and also hang out with an awesome group of people, there's a link down below in the description to a Discord that's free for everybody to join. And I would love to have you join the community of book friends that I've been able to make with my tenure here on YouTube. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about books again here soon. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Wait, I say that all the time, but it's especially relevant now.
Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.